right, we're live. So I didn't get too much reading done this season, probably because I just went for more. It's been a lot of Christian books this season. I don't think I did any fiction at all. So yeah, but that's basically started on the whole thing, which I'll get through as we go through. But so here I have Mere Christianity. It's by C.S. Lewis, the guy who wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, which I read last year. Those are really good books. I suggest those to be reading for anybody, especially if you're my age and you're basically in the millennial kind of mindset of just reading is terrible. And so, I mean, yeah, it's one of those things. We millennials, it's once you're really looking at the public school education and everything, we really are programmed to not like to read books, because as we're reading books all through school, even in high school, it's all about, oh, we're not just reading the book to enjoy it, we're reading the book because we want you to learn something. And oftentimes the propaganda sensor goes off, so then we just don't read books and we end up reading TV, watching TV, and playing video games and doing other forms of media that while they're equally controlled and equally propagandized, it's just a lot of times I think it's that reading is an active one. You have to actively read it. It's not going to read itself. You can't just turn it. You can't. It has to be. It's a consent. It's like you have to continuously make yourself read, and then eventually it turns into a habit that you really like. Yeah, and then also like getting away from school, all of a sudden you have more time to read as well. So, and it's not just reading stuff like that. Okay, just whatever they want you to do. So, Mere Christianity was a really good book. I think that's mostly, this is your basic any Christian intro to Christian apologetics. Anybody who's wanting to actually take a serious look at Christianity and its claims, just Mere Christianity is a great place to start. I mean, other than maybe the Gospel of John or Gospel of Matthew, like Christians. Yeah, I have a bunch of things underlined. Yeah, so basically, he starts out the book by doing a bunch of good arguments on for like God's existence. He uses the what do you call it, the morality argument that, well, if we have morals or morality is a real thing. And he goes and then morality is something that exists. It's not a material thing. So you can obviously see beyond the material viewpoint of this world, and that, well, what's not material, it must be either spiritual or metaphysical, and a lot of metaphysical. The metaphysical is essentially God's realm, while spiritual is more like angels and demons and maybe even our souls. But still, anyways, it's really good. Let's see, what else does he do? I mean, I'm probably just butchering his arguments. Just read the book yourself. Yeah. Anyways, so the next book I read, or I guess I'm halfway through reading it, is the Screwtape letters. I don't know if I'll finish it because it's really good. I really like it. It's really brilliant. But every time I open up the book, I get about a page and a half into the chapters, which, I mean, all chapters are only about 3.5 pages long. So it's not even that. It's quite easy. And each chapter is just in its own individual letter, because it's about a demon who's writing to another demon to talk about how to persuade the young man he's assigned to away from becoming a Christian. And it's really clever, and I really like it. It's really good. It's just my eyes kind of glaze over whenever I start reading it for some reason. I power through a lot of it, but I might be taking a break and just shelf it for a little bit and then maybe come back to it. One thing that I liked how he did was the demon was trying to talk about the different strategies they use, and they say there's 2 different strategies they use to get soul. The first one is to make the soul convinced of like magic and get the demonic powers and consent to them and everything. and then that way, whenever they consent to the demons, that's how they can get them to hell, the soul to hell. So magician. But then they say the other way is materiality, where it's fully convinced that no magic or nothing, there's nothing spiritual, there's nothing metaphysical. It's just the only things that exist are material, what you can see, touch, right? So that's interesting. I mean, it's just, it's one of those things. You hit into like the Darwin argument where it's just, where it's like, I mean, I know Darwin didn't know about DNA or even Gregor Mendel stuff, but DNA is information. It's has something that's creating them, and it's so like the Golgi apparatus or whatever it is in the cell, the nucleus or whatever, creates the DNA, and then that DNA goes to somewhere and it gets read by mitochondria or a ribosome or something, and then that cell interprets it. I mean, that organelle of the cell interprets it. So the DNA itself is only the medium. It's only just a bunch of like little, it's just a bunch of atoms and molecules and polypeptide chains and whatnot in a sequential order. The information itself transcends material. It's actually the material. I mean, yeah. And that's just like, there's some that it's pure proof that there is a creator or a instructor or somebody, or it has to come from a mind. There's no other logical way of it. Okay, anytime they go on random, anytime there's any kind of random error, it's always an error. Anyways, I'm not the best one to articulate that. I mean, what else is there in Darwinism that doesn't make sense? It's like the mutations, which are supposed to be what creates all the new things. So it's the mutations only. Then in reality, like people have bred this like stupid amount of fruit flies and had all these mutations on the fruit flies, but they yet have to produce something that is not a fruit fly or has something that doesn't belong on a fruit fly at all. So it's they can get one with only 2 legs. They can have one with a leg grown from its head. They can have one with no wings, 3 wings, no eyes, all sorts of things. But those are just mutations, which are just errors. It's like if you have a book and the book just has one page is printed at 700% magnification, and you can barely read half of what's supposed to be written on the page, but everything else, that's more like what a mutation is. So and then even if there wasn't beneficial mutation, it's like nearly impossible for it to become set within a population, especially once you get into what they mean by evolutionary pressure, which means that evolutionary pressure is what they refer to as whenever a population is secluded and only breeds among itself for many, many generations. And that's how a mutation can really get set. That's why whenever you see a lot of, whether it be like the Austrian dukes or maybe people who are, or tribes of people who are known for inbreeding a lot. That's why they end up with really big noses or really messed up faces or just other terrible deformities, because it's their mutations because the mutations that did happen were always in error and bad, and it did get fixed in their population. So yeah, de-evolution might be a thing. That like Adam and Eve were perfectly made how God meant them to be, and ever since then, since they've only ever transferred their generational DNA and everything, alleles, whatever you want to call them, from generation to generation after the fall, when everything was corrupted, we've been cyclically becoming less and less like them. It's been a fall. Yeah. So yeah, that's one thing to think of, that our ancestors were all better, probably physical specimens than all of us. It's likely. see what else was. Oh yeah, what I was going to go on with the screw tape letters, how it was either the demonics or whatever you call them, the magicians. He calls them and then the materialists. He said they were working on a third category where the demons and the magicians, I mean, the magicians and the materialists get combined. And I find that very interesting because it's kind of like the Marvel movies you see where in Thor, I think in every single Thor movie, I forget, it's been so long since I've seen any of them, that they mentioned that Thor makes a point to say in every single movie, like, that their magic is just our science, like is the same thing as our advanced science, which of course, in those movies, their advanced science is doing stuff like making teleporters and wormholes and stuff. And Thor is just saying, oh, well, that's just our magic. So they're trying to make, and then you also had Doctor Strange, where it's just he approaches the magic from a complete materialistic kind of standpoint. Like he never actually cures himself of like what was actually going wrong in his life. He was just he just became a materialist, and he just kind of shifted it to another. Oh yeah, this is all part of the material now. I don't know if you ever. Then again, it's been ages since I've seen Doctor Strange, so maybe I'm completely misrepresenting that. Anyways, that's good. Yeah. Last book I want to talk about is Believe. It's by some guy named Giuseppe Folotto out in, I believe he's an Italian who lives in London. So it's one of those things. I got noticed of it. His official name is the Kurgan. I officially learned about him whenever I used to listen to a live stream called it was Owen Benjamin, and he would anyways, he's a comedian from Hollywood, and he was going for the homesteading. You make a garden, you make a family, and all this good stuff. And then all of a sudden one day he just like started really going hard at the Holy Trinity, how he thinks it's just a bunch of nonsense, blah 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 blah. I feel bad even just reciting what his arguments are. I don't. Yeah, like mea culpa. I really hope that I just reciting what even his arguments are. But anyways, so I listen to so many people, Orthodox, Catholic, Protestants, everybody explaining what the Trinity meant, and they'd go on for like 2 or 3 hours, and they make like a 2 or 3 hour movie, also in like a live stream format, and it would be, I'd listen to do it on like 2 times speed, so I didn't waste that much time. But still, they would go on and on and on and on and on about the Trinity, and then one time then 2 times they've actually gotten an opportunity to explain to Owen in person the Trinity. The first shot was by a guy named Marty Leeds. That guy just turns out to be a complete Gnostic psycho who, like, he was using argument paths from, like, he was talking about Buddhism and Hinduism more than he was actually talking about Christianity at all. Whenever he was trying to prove the Trinity, he was like, it's just it's like, come on, man. Then the next people who got it was what are their names? It was E. Michael Jones, Dr. E. Michael Jones, Dr. Rachel Fulton Brown, some podcaster in Milo, Indianapolis, and they all basically cornered Owen on a live stream somehow using deceptive means, and just tried teaching him the Trinity apologetics. But once again, I think E. Michael Jones approached it from Owen is a musician, so he just started talking about music, like the triads and everything. Then Rachel Fulton Brown knew that Owen's always going on about conspiracy theories and how there's a larger narrative that's being written by the people who are by the, I guess you can call the oligarchs or Satan, the prince of this world that we live in, and this narrative that they're going, and then Owen does a lot of predictions on that and he's right about a lot. And then she was trying to go on that, so then she started talking about Lord of the Rings and then all this other, how it's part of the story, everything, and then the narrative that we find ourselves in this world, and how the Trinity is real. And then and that was about it. And it's just like, once again, those are not very good, convincing arguments. They let Owen get away with saying that the Trinity is not in the Bible, and that was pretty much where I actually thought it was. And then I heard about this guy, the Kurgan. He was like, he just out randomly, it just gave me a recommendation, like, oh, it's on a video. It said, the Trinity explained for heretics in under 30 seconds. It was an hour long movie. It was an hour long live stream did, but he basically explained that he basically didn't even talk about the Trinity for the other hour and a half. He just talked about the Trinity for maybe 2 minutes. And it was basically, he opened up his Bible to, you basically just open up the Bible, right? You got your Bible, and you open it up to the first letter of John. So it's pretty near the end. See, I didn't have this. Second letter of St. Peter, first of St. John. Here we go. First letter of St. John, chapter 5, verse 7. Verse 7. All right. And there are three who give testimony in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Ghost. And these three are one. Now, yes, it doesn't say the word Trinity, but that's pretty explicit there. Let's see. So then, what made me look more into this guy and what he was talking about, other than just he was the only person who actually able to bring down the hammer on, like, oh yeah, the Trinity is actually part of Christian dogma. It's so what made me look more into that was, first, this here is a Douay-Rheims version of the Bible. Douay-Rheims. It was translated in the 1500s, mostly as a response to the Protestant Reformations, and the fact that there was a Gutenberg printing press that was basically printing all these Bibles, where it's, the Geneva Bible, the King James Bible. I think the King James Bible came later, but basically what it was, they were printing all these Bibles, and I think there's 72 books in the original Bible. Since, essentially the 200s or the early 100s, like that's whenever they really put the church fathers put the Bible together and said, this is what we believe in here as Christians. And then, so then in 1500s, Martin Luther and others decided to take a bunch of books out of the Bible. And then a bunch of people convinced Martin Luther to put a few books back into the Bible. There's 72, I think there's 64 Bible books in the Protestant Bibles. I don't know if that's for sure, but anyways, they took those out. So then but of course, since the Catholics never really went out to make translations outside of Latin, that their masses were always given in Latin, and a lot of times the homily and everything would be in the secular language at the place. And then they would just talk about what the gospel is about, what the Old Testament was about, what the letter we read was about, and that's what the meat of the homily would be about, would be teaching everybody what is actually being said, whenever everybody's just around here talking in Latin. Anyways, so they translated the Bible into English. Douay-Rheims, I think Douay did the Old Testament, Rheims did the New Testament. Yeah, and then but anyways, So that is a Catholic Bible approved by the magisterium of the church and everything. So here's another one, which is called the New American Bible. I got this one in 5th grade from my lovely 5th grade Sunday school teacher named, I think, Gary Terrell. Yeah, Gary Terrell, that Christmas 2005. Because I kept on bringing a children's Bible into my Sunday school class. And 5th grade is apparently much too, and I would agree now at this point that reading a children's Bible is not going to actually teach. It's going to get you familiar with the stories of Christianity, familiar with what the Old Testament is about, because with especially the Old Testament, because it's so long and just and if you and it's good just to know the basics, especially as you're okay. But as far as trying to be a debate serious theology like Owen Benjamin was doing, and having only read a children's Bible, which he said on multiple streams. I remember, like, he says, I only read the children's Bible because, and it's just, oh, that's so, and people were getting so upset. Like, I could mostly just ignore it for the most part whenever, because a lot of the other topics he would talk about were really funny. But it's just, he just wouldn't stop about the Trinity. He just had some problem with the number 3. I don't know. But anyways, here in the New American Bible, also, I think this is the Vatican II approved Bible. So this would be 1958 to 1964. Sometime in our history, this got approved by the so-called magisterium of the Catholic Church. So chapter 5, verse 7. So there are 3 that testify, the Spirit, the water, and the blood. And these 3 are one of one accord. Oh, wait, no. Yeah, that was verse 7 and 8. Okay, so verse 7 is just, so there are 3 that testify. Meanwhile, in the Dewey Rames Bible, it said, there are 3 that testify in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Ghost. And these 3 are one. Gets cut down to, so there are 3 that testify. It's one of those things I always thought it was, I guess it was a matter of pride where, being a sin, like I thought I had the right Bible always growing up. And it was just, I thought that this is just basically what I always thought that Catholic Bible would be in English, would just be the translated straight from Latin or Greek or Hebrew, whatever, and then just rearranged so that it grammatically makes sense. But they turned out to just completely butcher that one line right there. And I was like, why? Catholics, we're supposed to be Trinity people, right? Why would we do that? So then, then you learn more about this. So then that brings me to more about the Philoto guy, known as the Kurgan, which that apparently, as I learned, is a reference to a movie called Highlander, which I never saw, but apparently the bad guy in the movie is called the Kurgan, and he gets his head cut off, and as you know, as a Catholic, being called maybe being one without a head. Now, what could that mean, right? Of course, it means they're like, this guy thinks the entire Second Council of the Second Vatican Council is heresies, and that by the Benedictine law, whatever, of 1917, or just of the magisterium of the church for the last 2,000 years, that if you any cleric that does heresies are considered defected from the church, and if you defect from the church, you tacitly forfeit your office. So that's what happened to that's what his argument is for this. It's called, I think the proper word for it is sedi-vacantism, which just means the seat is vacant, which the seat of Peter. So we haven't had a pope since 1958, and it's very likely that we haven't had a Vatican since probably the 70s. Anybody who's been a real Christian in the Vatican since at least the 70s or 80s, and that he basically in this book goes, and then he has this other book which I'm probably gonna end up reading, see how much before my eyes start glazing over and I just get bored with it. It's called Reclaiming the Catholic Church, the True History of Vatican II and the Visible Remnant of the Real Catholic Church, now that the Vatican is a pederast-infested hive of imposters. Anyways, and then here we go. The subtitle for Believe is The Real Christianity, Taking Christendom Back, a reply to the pederast-infested Vatican, the Churchians of all denominations, and a manual for atheists, agnostics, and would-be pagans. So, but what actually got me to want to buy this guy's book was there's an Orthodox guy named Jay Dyer, and I was listening to him for a while because I liked his movie reviews. He has a really good movie review on The Shining. I'll still say that's one of the best movie reviews of anything I've ever seen. It's like 40 minutes long, but he just goes on to every single little detail that Stanley Kubrick put into that film about. And then because if you've ever seen that movie, it's a horror movie, so I guess you don't. I'd suggest don't see it if you haven't. That's about it. But he goes into every single little detail, all the satanic and like different pedophilic vibes that are present in that book and that movie that I never saw. And then of course it's written by Stephen. The book was written by Stephen King, who's pretty much a pedophile because he just goes out and his whole book, all his books, which got connected in the same like universe kind of thing, kind of like a Marvel's Avengers thing, where all of a sudden he teams up everything. It's called The Dark Tower. I've never read any of these books, but basically what all the books have in common is that abused children get to have superpowers, and it's mostly just like psychic powers, more like MK Ultra kind of. You can see into the future kind of, or talk to people over long distances using telepathy and stuff. So it's and then that's why karma is of course evil, because anybody who's trying to push the word karma on you, if they don't just mean like, oh, karma is what I'm saying is that karma is an inverted form of justice. Like justice is the wicked going to hell, and the good, the true and beautiful maybe go to purgatory for a while. Maybe a few of them get to go to heaven, right? Or maybe a few of them, many get sent to limbo or different places, because limbo, and some of the easier circles of hell, because we just fail so fantastically as to what we should be. Anyways, where was I? Oh yeah, Jay Dyer. So this guy debates this guy, Jay Dyer. But this guy who's a sedevacantist. So, and then Jay Dyer is an Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox. So they're like, and Jay Dyer claims to be an ex-sedevacantist who says that it's all nonsense and that you should just become an Orthodox. It's a lot more easy. So, anyways, that whole debate, I would suggest nobody watches it. You would read it, or I listened to it on an MP3 file. Wow, Jay commits so many. He's all about logic and everything. He commits so many logical fallacies throughout that. I think let's think debate sins. Just like he said at one point, the Kurgan makes in his very opening statement makes a grammatical error, which is basically there's two books that Jay was arguing in his thing. It was one was by Ludwig Ott and the other one was by Denzinger. Anyways, I have Denzinger up there. Yeah, but still, Denzinger is just a collection of papal encyclicals, and I forget what Ludwig Ott is, but he used those as why sedevacantism can't happen, because can't be. And then Kurgan, of course, comes in and says, well, Ludwig and Denzinger don't matter and stuff like that. And Jay basically says that, oh, you think Ludwig and Denzinger are the same person. It's basically, you committed a grammatical error, so therefore I win the debate. And that was so dishonest. I mean, the Kurgan did correct himself on that. And then the other thing the Kurgan was, I think it was something about the 1917 or the 1983 Pio Benedictine law. It's he was talking about why the 1983 is flawed, because it's post Vatican II, and obviously would be incorporated with all the heresies thereof. And then Jay, of course, is like, oh no, I was talking about the 1917. Then Kurgan corrects himself. So, anyways, Kurgan's committed 2 debate sins. He corrected both of them. Then Jay afterwards goes on the do the whole. He declares he wins the debate, so therefore he wins the debate. That there's 2 sins on top of the first one where my opponent has a grammatical error, so therefore I win. The third one he commits is Sedevacantism has about like 130 churches across America. So it's not popular. So therefore I'm correct and you lose the debate. So that's once again, that's what you call it, peer pressure. It's obviously what's popular is not always right. All right. And that's why democracy is not a virtue. I found that just because a bunch of people vote for somebody doesn't mean it's right. What else did he do? Oh yeah, red herring, because apparently this guy, the Kurgan's only been a Christian since 2017, which I mean, yeah, suspicion is cast there. Yeah, suspicion. Yeah. Anyways, so but still, Jake basically just throws it like I can't believe anybody takes this guy seriously. He channels UFOs and some stuff, and of course that's just what you call a red herring. They're not even talking about what they're supposed to be talking about. And then so that's just a red herring. But Kurgan replies to it like, "Oh yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff that happened to me, and I didn't know how to react to it because I wasn't in the Christian paradigm." So yeah. What else happened really? The basis of Jay's argument was basically that it would be impossible for the Catholic Church to ever recover because if the cardinals and the Holy See in Rome is vacant, because then they can who chooses the Pope? It's the cardinals. Who chooses the cardinals? The Pope. It's like kind of a cyclical thing. So then, therefore, if all the cardinals become heretics, or if all the cardinals become vacant, or they just vacate their seats tacitly, that they would never be able to ever have a real Pope, and therefore the Catholic Church falls, and therefore it can't be the church that stays up for all eternity in as prophesied in the book of Revelation. And then therefore the only other one is either the Coptic Church or the Orthodox Church. So that's the argument. Or the Novus Ordo Vatican II Catholic Church, which is a lot more popular. There are more than 130 of them in America. All right. But then he basically says that, well, the Kurgan responds to that with, well, basically, how did the Cardinals got instituted in the 800s. So how did we do it before then? It's basically you're on a building, right? If you're going up the building, everybody's using the stairs, and then all of a sudden they invent the elevator. The elevator goes up, brings people up and down now. But one day the elevator goes out of order. Do you not use the stairs now? No, yeah, you would just go back and use the stairs. So you would have to go back and choose Pope and choose a new Holy See and everything. Bishops for the 7 Hills of Rome, and choose a new Pope using the ways before the Cardinals were instituted in the 800s, which was all the bishops of the world would just get together and do a vote. So, I mean, which is a lot more possible if there's less bishops. Yeah, I think the reason they had to eventually institute the Cardinals is because there was too many bishops. Anyways, but yeah, seeing how the Kurgan kept his cool in the whole debate, I still don't know if he technically won because the Kurgan also never called him out on Jay on any of these debate sins or logical fallacies he committed. So if I was watching the debate, like seeing both their faces and doing reactions like, oh no, in real time, I might have been partial towards Jay winning the debate. And then, so yeah, I would suggest nobody. I basically summed up the whole thing right there. Yeah. The whole argument that Denzinger doesn't matter. Denzinger is the collection of papal encyclicals and different councils ecumenical councils throughout church history. That it's basically the sources of Catholic dogma. So when arguing like about the legal stuff about how we're going to choose a new pope and whether or not this is heretical, Benzinger actually doesn't matter because it's like you're fighting a traffic ticket or fighting a speeding ticket. You go into court instead of just paying the fine. You go into court and you like start citing the Constitution, like where in the Constitution does it say speeding ticket? You're just going to get laughed at because it's the Constitution is just where we do is the what do you call it, the guidelines, the guidelines and stuff for new laws and the ideas and frameworks for new laws or restrictions for what laws they can make. Meanwhile, the laws is actually what interacts with the persons of the U.S. So it's the same thing with it's what matters is the 1917 Pio Benedictine law, which I also have up there. I think it's right there, the white book. Yeah, so then there's that. So actually, let's talk about this book. It was pretty good. I read it in like 3 days. It's pretty straightforward. I like his writing style, or maybe I don't like it. It's very rambly. Like I would believe it that he just talked to a transcript, talked to like a voice recorder for a few hours, for like a while, and then just had it automatically generate, and then have like a program or something just automatically generate text, because it is very rambly. But it's for the most part good grammar and everything. So basically it's divided into 4 sections. It's the first one's for atheists, the second one's for agnostics, which I mean, he doesn't do the best job at taking these guys out. Once again, I think the transcendental arguments are a lot better. He uses like natural philosophy and morality, and which are both really good, which are both effective for a lot of people. But I think the best way is just to be, just saying like, oh, okay, is basically the transcendentals, which is basically radiance of God is truth, right? So God is truth. So if you're saying God is not real, then you're saying truth is not real. And it's just, that's absurd, because it's obviously that I know, it's just like, it's one of those things, puts you into an infinite loop error, like this statement is a lie. Well, if that statement is a lie, then it's actually true. But then it's but if it's true, then it's not a lie. But then it is a lie. So then it's true. Then it's just like, an infinite loop it's just an infinite error loop, where you can say lies are not real. There we go. Truth is, which I mean, going back to the brain bush, God is, once again, I am who I am, or God says I am who I am. That's just using transcendentals like that is a lot better than, I mean, I probably just butchered it and make fun of me as you will, but yeah, that's agnostics. Once again, it's people who, once they don't know, they're just like kind of in a state of not knowing. Once again, I always like bouncing off the wall. The one I made, the argument for God, I found when I was still in high school. I still believed in Darwinism, like adamantly. I was zealous for evolution. Still, anyways, mine would always be, what is your favorite song? And they'd say whatever their favorite song is. I'd say why, and they said maybe it's the chords or the beat or something. And then like, no, like, why do you actually enjoy music? Why is it pleasant to your ears? Why can it like move us to the point of tears when it's just a bunch of sounds bouncing off the wall? That doesn't make any sense. And they just say, well, what? Like, I mean, we evolved allegedly to hear like snakes in the grass, or maybe a rabbit's over there, a deer, so we can hunt, or maybe we can avoid being prey. So that's what, but now all these sound waves are amplifying and bouncing off the walls, and like they match up with each other just right. Why do we even care? right? It's the best somebody could say is, well, it's a happy accident. And I was like, well, if it's a happy accident, it requires a giant Bob Ross in the sky somewhere to make a happy accident. So anyways, and so part 3 is called For Churchians, which I mean, which that's a good thing to read. It's just about the For Churchians part, which is basically modern day Pharisees. They're all over our churches. They basically push people away from the true faith because they're modern day Pharisees, and children can, and especially teenagers who are going through a rebellious phase, can definitely sense the BS when they see it and hear it. And so a lot of times Protestants, Catholics, Orthodox, and just general, these people are just, they get turned away because they smell BS, because it's like whether or not you get a group of just people at church who they, once again, but I don't know, just it's a good read. Then chapter 3, he talks about how like it's differentiating between these fake Christians, how it's actually good to reject them, but then once again, it actually leads people away from anything real Christianity. That whenever you actually go around like, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, and people just look at you like you're a retard because that's who they think you are. It's just the person. Yeah. Anyways, I'll go on before I start ranting about sola fide or sola scriptura, and then and how stupid those ideas are. He absolutely tears those apart in this book. Actually, the Protestant ideas of sola fide and sola scriptura. Yeah, he tears apart Catholics pretty good as well. I mean, look at that. Like, just in the subtitle of his book, he calls them pederast infested Vatican. So, and then Orthodox, the Coptics, and he was kind of nice to both of them. So he let them off the hook. I mean, he did mention that the Orthodox Church in Russia and everything was in bed with the Soviet government, with the communist government, and would sell their own, like, and they would break the vow confessional and go sell out their parishioners to the government. That is the priests, of course. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what we got going on today. I mean, just to the point where it's, yeah. Anyways, and he talks about Coptics. He said he knows nothing about Coptics, and he just talks about the generic Churchians. And he has part 4, which is for actual Christians, and he has a pretty good part on that. So overall, good book. I plan on continuing to read and hitting up his bigger book here. It's only 500 pages. It shouldn't be too bad. And especially in his writing style. Anyways, it's a good book review and book rant. Did I mention? Wait. Yeah, the combination. Get back to the Screwtape letters. Actually, the combination. That's why it's always proper to be aware. I think I talked about the combination of the materialist and the magician being in the Marvel movies, but it's also in the real world. I think they're going to do it with either transhumanism, with the vaccines giving people certain powers or communicating with each other, or it's going to be with aliens, where it's kind of pre-programmed in movies, and you can see it happening now in the real world. They might try pushing it to be this whole new that it's all still going to be science and in line with materiality, but you're really going to be it's really just going to be demons. So I think any good Christian can, or any person with a level head can probably differentiate. Hopefully, I'll pray that they do. Yeah. But yeah, what is it? The M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, which he always thought was just a movie about aliens come to Earth, and then for some reason they're allergic to water again, like, because that was in what H.G. Wells' For the Worlds. They were allergic to water, and it was okay. And again, in Signs, it's they're allergic to water. Then you watch Signs Again, and you realize that, oh well, Mel Gibson, who's the main character, he has a daughter. His daughter came out in birth not crying, and they considered her a blessed child. And then she basically had this thing with water where she left a bunch of water sitting around the house, but because she touched it with her lips and whatnot, it becomes blessed water. And that's how they actually defeat the aliens in the end, was by water. They had got some water on it, and like the aliens started dissolving. And you always thought that was really dumb. But then I guess because it's like, why would you, if you were allergic to water, why would you invade a planet that's 90, like 70% covered in water? But then it's all of a sudden well, that water was blessed, but it was holy water. Those are demons. And then you realize the whole movie has severe like religious undertones to the entire thing. So yeah. So get ready for, they might try a fake alien invasion, or I don't know if there's gonna be, yeah. Say no to uploading your consciousness onto any computer. I'd say no to vaccines as well. Those are modifying the human being in a way that we don't need to be. Yeah. Say no. Yeah. I found that was an interesting one on the whole computer ones I heard. It was from one of the Orthodox guys that I was listening to called Church of the Eternal Logos. That's his YouTube channel, the Church of the Eternal Logos. And he mentioned that, I forget what it was called, but it was basically the idea that these people truly believe that they can, in fact, upload their actual consciousness onto a computer, right? And then he said, well, what if the computer decides that it doesn't like you, or that you need to be punished, and they can actually punish you in the computer, you're being in the computer for all eternity. And they say like every single time that they like that the actual and he was actually like reading these people's actual articles that they write in like scholarly journals and stuff. They say we don't think about that because that's just too terrifying. Because they okay. Anyways, good night.